It was one of those nights where everything just seemed to shift in an instant. The kind of moment that changes not only the direction of a game, but the entire mood around a team. What started as a relatively controlled situation quickly turned into something far more unsettling when the starting pitcher had to leave the field early. And not just leave, but be taken out in a way that immediately raises concern. In baseball, more than in almost any other sport, the mental side plays a massive role. And when you see something like that unfold right in front of you, it's impossible for it not to affect the rest of the group. You could feel it right away. The energy dipped, the rhythm was gone, and suddenly the focus wasn't just about executing pitches or putting together at-bats anymore. It became about processing what just happened. When a player goes down, clutching his knee like that, the first thought that creeps into everyone's mind is the worst-case scenario. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but it's there, lingering in the background. And when that player has a story filled with perseverance, setbacks, and a long road back to this level, it hits even harder. This wasn't just any outing. This was a moment that meant something bigger for him, a chance to reestablish himself after years of grinding to get back to the top level of the sport. The last time he had been on a major league mound before this stretch, things didn't go the way he had hoped. That led him to take a completely different path, going overseas, working on his game, rebuilding his confidence, and putting together a season that demanded attention. It was the kind of comeback story that fans rally behind, the kind that makes you want to see it succeed. And then, just like that, in his very first appearance back in the spotlight, it all comes to a halt. That's why the reaction feels so heavy. It's not just about losing a pitcher for a game or even a couple of weeks. It's about everything that led up to this point, everything that was invested into getting here, and how quickly it can all be put into jeopardy. The uncertainty is what makes it even tougher. Until there's a clear diagnosis, everything is speculation, and that waiting period can feel endless for both the player and the team. From a purely competitive standpoint, though, the reality is that the game doesn't stop. The team still has to move forward, and that's where things start to get complicated. What once looked like a position of strength in the rotation suddenly becomes question mark. Not long ago, there was a sense that there were more than enough arms to get through the early part of the season comfortably. Now, that depth is being tested much earlier than anyone expected. When you lose a starter that early in a game, it creates a domino effect that stretches far beyond just that one night. The bullpen gets pushed into action immediately, and instead of having a structured plan, everything becomes reactive. Pitchers who might have been scheduled for specific situations are suddenly being asked to cover multiple innings, and that kind of workload can add up quickly, especially this early in the season. That's where the mental and physical challenges start to overlap. Relievers are creatures of routine, just like starters, and when that routine is disrupted, it can take a toll. One night of heavy usage might not seem like a big deal on its own, but when it stacks on top of other games where the bullpen has already been active, it becomes a serious concern. Managing that balance becomes one of the toughest tasks for the coaching staff moving forward. Looking ahead, the big question becomes who steps into that open spot in the rotation. It's not as simple as plugging in the next name and expecting everything to run smoothly. Each option comes with its own set of limitations. Some pitchers might be stretched out enough to give you a few innings, but not necessarily the length you would ideally want from a starter. Others might have better overall stuff, but are more suited for shorter appearances, making them less reliable in a situation where innings are desperately needed. And that's really the key issue here. It's not just about finding someone who can pitch, it's about finding someone who can stabilize things, even if only temporarily. Because if that doesn't happen, the pressure shifts right back onto the bullpen, and that's a cycle that can quickly spiral if it's not managed carefully. Early in the season, you never want to be in a position where you're already stretching your pitching staff to its limits, but that's exactly where things are heading. At the same time, there is a small sense of optimism when you look at the bigger picture. There are players expected to return down the line, arms that could help reinforce the rotation and take some of that pressure off. But the challenge is getting to that point without putting too much strain on the group that's currently available. It's a delicate balance between surviving the present and preparing for the future, and how that balance is handled could have a lasting impact on the trajectory of the season. Offensively, there were still moments that showed potential, flashes of what this lineup is capable of when things are clicking. But it's difficult to fully evaluate that side of the game when the overall tone has been affected so heavily by what happened on the mound. The focus inevitably shifts, and even solid performances at the plate can feel secondary in a situation like this. All of this creates a scenario where every decision moving forward carries a bit more weight. Whether it's how the pitching staff is managed, who gets called upon to fill specific roles, or how aggressive the team chooses to be in navigating these early challenges, there's very little room for error. And in a sport where consistency is everything, dealing with this kind of disruption so early can test even the most prepared teams in ways they didn't anticipate. As the game moved forward, the ripple effects of that early exit became impossible to ignore, especially when you started looking at how heavily the bullpen had already been used in the previous days. This wasn't a fresh group coming into a normal situation. These were arms that had already logged meaningful pitches, and suddenly they were being asked to cover even more ground with no real warning. That's where things start to get tricky because it's not just about getting through one game anymore. It's about protecting the next few as well. Almost even more important. At the same time, the coaching staff is faced with a series of difficult decisions that don't have clear answers. Do you push your starter a little further than you normally would, even if his pitch count is climbing? Do you rely on a reliever who might not be fully recovered, hoping he can give you just enough? Or do you take a chance on a less experienced arm, knowing that the outcome could swing either way? Every option carries risk, and there's no guarantee that any of them will solve the problem completely. This is where depth, something that looked like a strength not too long ago, is suddenly being tested in real time. On paper, having multiple options is great, but in practice, those options need to be ready for the specific roles they're being asked to fill. A pitcher who is used to short bursts might struggle when stretched out, while someone built for longer outings might not have the sharpness needed in high-pressure moments. Finding the right balance between those profiles becomes crucial. Another factor that adds to the complexity is the timing within the season. Early games are always about building rhythm, establishing roles, and getting players into a comfortable routine. When something like this happens so soon, it disrupts that entire process. Instead of gradually settling into defined responsibilities, players are being thrown into unfamiliar situations, and that adjustment period can lead to inconsistencies across the board. Still, there's a path through this, even if it's not an easy one. The key lies in managing expectations and understanding that not every outing is going to look clean or dominant. Sometimes, success in a situation like this is simply getting through it without causing further damage. If the team can navigate these next few games without overextending their key arms even more, that alone could be considered a small victory. There's also the possibility of creative solutions starting to come into play. This could mean mixing and matching pitchers in ways that weren't originally planned, using situational matchups more aggressively, or even leaning on unconventional strategies to bridge the gap until reinforcements arrive. Baseball seasons are long, and adaptability often separates teams that can withstand adversity from those that struggle to recover. At the same time, all eyes naturally shift toward the upcoming start and how it will be handled. There's an expectation now that more will be needed, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of durability. Going deeper into the game isn't just a bonus anymore. It's almost a necessity. And that kind of expectation can bring out the best in some players, while putting added pressure on others. What makes this situation even more compelling is how quickly things can change. One strong outing from a starter can stabilize everything, giving the bullpen a chance to reset and bringing a sense of normalcy back to the rotation. On the other hand, another short start could push the staff even closer to its limits, forcing even tougher decisions in the days that follow. And while the pitching situation remains the primary focus, there's an underlying understanding that the offense may need to carry a bit more of the load during this stretch. Scoring early, building leads, and creating breathing room can make a significant difference when the pitching staff is under pressure. It doesn't solve everything, but but it can certainly ease some of the tension and allow pitchers to work with a bit more confidence. All of these elements come together to create a stretch of games that will test not just the talent on the roster, but the resilience of the entire group. It's one of those moments in a season where the response matters just as much as the outcome, where how a team handles adversity can shape its identity moving forward. And right now, every inning, every pitch, and every decision feels like it carries just a little bit more weight than usual. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. A wave of speculation is beginning to ripple through the league after comments attributed to Kyle Tucker suggested growing frustration behind the scenes, particularly in relation to the Los Angeles Dodgers. While nothing has been officially confirmed, insiders and analysts are already dissecting every word, trying to understand what might be unfolding beneath the surface. According to circulating reports, Tucker's remarks hinted at dissatisfaction not just with on-field dynamics, but potentially with broader organizational decisions. Though the context of his statement remains somewhat unclear, the tone has been widely interpreted as unusually candid for a player known to maintain composure in public settings. This has only fueled the narrative that something deeper may be at play. Sources close to the situation suggest that tensions could stem from expectations versus reality, whether tied to team chemistry, strategic direction, or personal ambitions. In a league where even subtle comments can spark major storylines, Tucker's alleged stance is already being viewed as a possible early sign of unrest. Some observers believe this could be nothing more than a moment of frustration taken out of proportion, while others argue it may point to a more significant disconnect. The Dodgers, long regarded as one of the most stable and competitive organizations, are no strangers to scrutiny. However, rumors involving high-profile players tend to amplify quickly, especially when they involve suggestions of dissatisfaction. For now, the club has remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the interpretations circulating in media circles. What makes this situation particularly intriguing is the timing. With expectations always high around Los Angeles, any hint of internal friction raises questions about how it might impact the team moving forward. Whether Tucker's comments reflect a temporary sentiment or something more lasting remains uncertain, but the speculation alone is enough to keep fans and analysts watching closely. As with many stories in professional sports, the truth may lie somewhere between rumor and reality. Until more concrete information emerges, the narrative surrounding Tucker and the Dodgers will likely continue to evolve, driven as much by interpretation as by fact. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.